What's up, Travis? Thanks for doing this, man. How you been?
Hey, pretty good, man. I appreciate you having me on. I've been going back listening to some of your other podcasts, and it's really cool. What you're doing.
Oh man, well I appreciate that, but been trying to get you on for. Well, not, I won't say I haven't been trying to get you on for a while, because usually after someone wins a tournament, everybody wants to talk to you. So I kind of leave you alone for a little bit and let all the better podcasts get their show or get their episodes and things. But I want to talk to you personally because I fished the same event as you fished.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of getting into, and we'll talk about that later, but I'm gonna make this episode a little bit about myself because I got the Susky coming up here in a few weeks as well. So, but before we really get into this thing, man, you got to introduce yourself just in case someone doesn't listen to those other podcasts. Kind of, so people kind of know who you are before we really start talking about things.
All right. Yeah. Travis von Neumann. I am in Columbus, Ohio. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Just as a kid, I was just like a wading river fisherman. Got into kayak fishing, around 16 or so, just for fun. Then I went to college at Ohio University and joined the fishing club there. And my interest in fishing really took off. And on a spring break trip in college, I actually went down to Florida and really got into tournament fishing by fishing a river bassin event on that spring break trip. I went down there with some buddies just to fish the panhandle rivers of Florida. I wasn't really doing the partying spring break thing. We were doing, just kayak fishing rivers. And from there.
Let me ask you, what rivers are you talking about? I'm from the panhandle. I'm from Panama City, Florida.
Okay.
What rivers are you talking about? 'Cause I know a lot of creeks like Ecofana and some of those, but is that what they consider rivers now these days?
Yeah. Rivers, creeks, anything flowing really. For those trips, I went two years in a row there in college. It was the Wakulla River, the St. Mark's River, and the Wasissa River.
Okay.
And then after I graduated, I actually ended up moving down to Lake City, Florida, and I was there for like a year and a half. Really got to explore, the Suwannee River system. Then I moved out to Pensacola, got to fish those rivers out there, and this whole time I was just fishing the river bassin tournament trail that Drew Gregory ran really hard. So I was traveling the country, fishing places like the Susquehanna, and I went fish rivers in Texas, just all over the place, really. And after that died down, the river bassin trail, I've just been doing a couple KBF events here and there whenever I think there's a river inbounds that I could fish and do okay in. And just this year was my first Hobie event, and it turned out pretty well. So I managed to just stumble upon the right size fish 2 days in a row and got the win there. And the cool thing for me is I was born in Plattsburgh, New York, so I can't really claim it. My family moved away, when I was like 3 months old. My dad was in the military, so I can't really claim it. But growing up, I always wanted to go back fish there because I was born there.
Yeah.
But,
so that's crazy. Florida, New York, you've been all over the place.
Yeah.
So if I'm not mistaken, you said you kind of choose a lot of your tournaments if you can find a river system on it. Is that correct?
Yeah. For the most part, like, that river bassin trail background, that was all rivers. That's what I like to do. That's what I do for fun still. I'm currently up to 99 rivers spanning 15 different states. So that's kind of my thing. And then, if I'm picking a tournament, I usually like to have some good river options, but I did not fish rivers for Lake Champlain. I was actually on the north end of the lake there. That
was crazy in itself. Because the north end, it was one of those weird things where like everyone knew they should have gone to the north end, but only a few people had the the cojones to go up there and actually do it.
Yeah, I didn't really have like a plan B or a plan C. I wasn't expecting the wind and the waves. As people have heard, there were 3-4 foot waves rolling at that north end, and I found one good fish pre-fishing and just decided to commit to it. And I mean, it took work. It was exhausting on me, both mentally and physically, just trying to not flip, even though I did flip my kayak both days. But I didn't really have a backup plan. I actually had fished that area in college during the college FLW tournament.
Mhm.
And I just remembered there being a lot of fish in that area. And since we were there a little bit earlier in the summer than I would fish there in college, because in the college FLW series, you fish on like a pro's boat. They like would take you out. My school didn't have a bass boat, so the pro's boat we were on, I remember him telling us like the fish we were catching shouldn't have been there that time of year. It was like later in the summer. They're like they should really be a lot deeper. And since we were going up earlier, and I didn't have a thermometer or anything. I don't have any electronics, so I didn't know the water temp. But people were saying the temperature was pretty cool, pretty chilly. So those fish just happened to be pretty shallow. I got lucky, really. Everything just lined up perfectly.
And so, like, you went out there with your Jackson Kilroy,
Yeah.
no fish finder. And you know, I mean, like a lot of people, like, I mean, went up there with like some highly sophisticated, equipment and stuff, and struggled, And you just asked someone what the water temps were, and you went out and you found them.
Yeah. It just got lucky, It was like, I guess growing up, looking at bass fishing tips, you hear when the wind's blowing, to fish the side the wind's blowing to, because it's going to push. Pretty much the whole ecosystem that way. The bait fish will, follow the plankton going that way, and then the bass will follow the bait fish. And that I think that's kind of what happened. I don't really know. I know it's supposed to be a good smallmouth area where I was at. If you Google, Lake Champlain, it's listed as one of the good smallmouth areas, and that's where I like to do. So, yeah, just got lucky.
Well, let me ask you this though, because I think there's different kind of smallmouth. I don't even know if you really consider like the, and way more. I'll be honest, I'm a little overwhelmed. I kind of regret signing up for the Susky. I've never fished that kind of water before. I know I'm probably gonna feel different once I get down there, but just in my mind, it just sounds completely like it's just not what I'm used to fishing. Like they're really shallow, and then even like faster moving currents. And I fish places like Champlain and Oneida Lake, Onondaga, Cayuga, like all those kind of New York fisheries, which are just it's kind of like big lakes. But the smallmouth are different though, in the sense that they're deep usually. Like, I mean, and they go out there and target smallmouth during a tournament, unless it's like springtime, or whatever, post or pre-spawn or whatever. But they're deep. They're out there. They're sitting on rocks, away from the shore, which is one of the reasons why I stuck, shallow fishing over there when I was up there at Champlain. But how are you gonna go out there without electronics and figure something out? Because I mean, these, like I said, these smallmouth are different than the ones you're used to targeting in the river systems, correct? And you would know that better than I would. Yeah. But I mean, you went out there blind and you fish a species that I don't know. If you would have told me you were out there like targeting like largemouth, you're trying to find the grass area, or whatever. It's easy to target that, but smallmouth, that's like it's something I wish I was better at. Cause I live in such a great smallmouth fishery, all around me that it's something I should really invest in. But I just haven't gotten that good, so it's not something I really bank on for tournaments yet. But here you are, and I saw I was looking at your limit again today on your Instagram. I'm like, those are big ass smallmouth. But like why would you even think about targeting smallmouth in a situation like that? Cause I thought maybe you found some shallow water or something up. I've never been up the north end. I thought maybe you found a river or something like that, and that's where you beat them up at. But no, you're telling me that you didn't. But so what was kind of like? What did you see that made you really want to start, the fish there the way you did, or anything? And you don't gotta give out any secrets or anything. I'm just curious what made you do that without the fish finder and the boat that you're on and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have done as well as I did if the conditions weren't what they were. I think if things were calmer and sunnier, I think those fish would have been a lot more spread out. And I was expecting to come up here and maybe try to fish deep without electronics. Yeah, I know that's, kind of, fighting a losing battle there against everybody who's got them. But I was just going to go out there and just try to find hard bottom and just try to feel the bottom, I like to throw a little finesse jig or, I was planning on going out there and drop shotting and just trying to feel the bottom and finding rocky or hard bottom and just finding them that way. But the conditions, the way they were, I wasn't able to go out far from the bank at all. I cut across, a channel, I cut across a bay and then just fished a point, and I wasn't able to really paddle that far off of that point. I kind of just had to sit on it or paddle around it. I was just getting blown back into it all day. And I anchored up in really shallow water and kind of tucked behind some rocks that were blocking some of the wind. And I really didn't move around much at all day. If the conditions weren't the way they were, I would not have had a pile of fish there. I would have been able to move around a little bit more and, find it, but I wouldn't have been catching giants all day long like I was.
So it was kind of an accident, like how it all played out, right?
Yeah, I was planning on fishing. I was planning on actually doing and I did this float trip day one, put in at one boat ramp and take out at another because my girlfriend was there and she was able to just move my car and pick me up at a different boat ramp. And I was planning on moving around a lot and being offshore and finding them. The area was maybe 20 feet of water, and it changed a lot. There was a lot of God, what do they call them out there? Reefs, I guess is what was on the topo map I was looking at. But no, I wasn't really able to do that. I found a 19 3/4 incher pre-fishing. And that was right before I was pretty much about to give up and go look for rivers. And I found it really shallow right on that point. And the next day I went there for tournament day and they were there and there was a lot of them there. And there were seagulls coming down and feeding on the bait fish. It was just, and you could see smallmouth cruising around in those waves. If you just focused and looked long enough in one spot, you'd see big smallmouth roll. I was just on a big school that was actively feeding on bait fish. So it's just the conditions just lined up perfectly.
Right.
And I wasn't planning on those conditions. I just stumbled upon it.
Well, how important was the map reading then? Because that's what I imagine. If you can't use a fish finder, if you can't see what the bottom looks like, you can kind of go off a map, right? When you're looking at how contour lines are set up and finding areas that look pretty on the map, right?
Yeah, that's what I was planning on doing. It looked like I had, miles almost of water that I was going to just work myself across, where I had a lot of change in the contour of the bottom just by that topo map. And just, researching the lake itself, it said it's a good smallmouth area. So I knew it was probably going to be rocky. And I figured that with that big of a change, there was areas of 3 foot of water, areas of 10 foot down to 16 and then 20 feet. I was just going to just cruise around that whole area throughout the tournament and figure out what they were hanging on. And the conditions that we had, I wasn't really able to do that. And fortunately I didn't have to.
Yeah. That's interesting. So the fact that you couldn't go out there and graph and explore, because that's what my friends who are really into the smallmouth fishing, that's what they do. They go to these lakes and they'll spend almost 2 days and they'll barely cast, and they'll just be out there graphing, finding where the fish are, and then see if they can find a pattern, if the fish are going to move, stuff how it is, the smallmouth will move and things like that. And it's just it always seems like a gamble to me. That's why I hadn't really invested that much into it as far as tournament fishing, because I don't know what I would do, if you show to a spot and your fish just move. It's well, now I got to spend a little bit of time trying to figure out where they're at now. And I've seen it cost my friends a few times, but however, I have seen it. It's one of those things where if it's on though, you're and it's a smallmouth fishery, it's a good chance you're going to win with a smallmouth, just because they're just longer. They won't be as fat and happy as some of the largemouth you see down, especially in the south end. But they'll be long. They'll be beat up and skinny, but they'll be long. And but it's just funny because you didn't have to do all that crazy. It was just the conditions pretty much set you up for success. If not, who knows where you would have been off wandering trying to find these things.
Exactly. Yeah, I would have been searching for them, the whole time, and probably catching fish just because there's a lot of fish in that lake. But I don't think it would have been the quality just over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's interesting. Well, let's talk. Because I want to talk about. Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people about it. Trying to figure out what I'm going to do down there. River fishing, man, it's different. River. I thought I knew what rivers were, and then I looked at what the Susky was, and then I look at what the Mississippi and some of those. Just a different kind of river systems. But it seems like you guys from Ohio have a similar rivers compared to I guess what the Susquehanna. I'm just gonna say the Susky because people make fun of me when I try to say the whole word. But just to me, it just seems like it's a skinny water for the most part. I was looking at the map. And it's frustrating because I can look at a map, for any of my lakes, and it tells me a lot. You look at the maps for the Susky, and I'm like, this don't tell me anything. It just tells me everything's shallow, and I'm just like, I can't go off this. So that now I feel like I'm having to go down there, that Thursday or Wednesday, and it's going to be just exploring. And I know I'll figure it out, but still at the same time, it's like I don't have like we're getting ready for a tournament. You love that time when you're at home, you got a beer, you're looking at your maps, like, oh, this looks good, and you look at all the different kind of map systems that you can. And you look at the history and things like that, but not really having a good time with this one. It's just different. I'm looking forward to it, but at the same time, it's like I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. You growing up on the rivers, what are some of the things that we can learn? It's like targeting fish compared to, like, I guess especially smallmouth compared to like how they are up here. What are they like? Like, what's their behavior? They're in there's constant motion, so I imagine they're feeding year round pretty heavily because they're constantly having to fight currents and things like that. So I don't know. I guess maybe we can start off with just the difference between like a smallmouth in the river and the smallmouth in the lakes, or just fish in general when you're really getting into like river fishing.
Yeah, I mean, river fishing, the current is king pretty much. All the fish are relating to the current, especially here in the summer. So I definitely like to. I like to, and a lot of people do like to focus on, the picturesque, rapids and riffles that you're going to see and fishing those eddies, the calm water directly off of the current break of those riffles. But, some areas that are kind of overlooked, I think. Now, obviously, people who fish rivers and know what they're doing, they know to do this, but they call it the push water, upstream, the upstream side of like a rapid, or the current where there's like a taper up in the contour of the bottom. Like the bottom will, it'll be real deep, like before you hit that rapid, and then it'll like taper up to it. It seems to be like a big fish holding spot for me on a lot of rivers, and especially the Susquehanna itself. I know pretty much all my big fish I've ever caught there are on the upstream side of like a big rapid or structure. Or like there's a lot of grass islands on the Susquehanna as well. So that's one thing I would say to focus on is those taper up or push water areas is what I would be focusing on if I was able to do the Susky tournament. But yeah, I mean the fish just relate to current really, and the Susquehanna is such a rocky, hard bottom river that there's plenty of that around. It's got a really good bottom for smallmouth, because smallmouth, especially river smallmouth, they love eating crawdads. That's a big part of their diet. So I know here in Ohio you can kind of struggle. Some rivers are really rocky, or you'll have stretches that are really rocky. But if you've got a soft bottom, a soft substrate, it's usually not as good for smallmouth. But you're probably not going to have that issue on the Susky. It's all pretty good. One thing I would just mention is those taper ups, that push water areas, and definitely I'd be throwing top water around those grass islands. It's no secret there, but that's probably what a lot of people are going to be doing.
Yeah. Now, you talk about like there being upstream of these these contour differences. Mm-hmm. Not downstream, right? I mean, like they're like I'm thinking like ambush points, right? Like, I mean, like how are they? Like, it's
so like on the Susky, there'll be like giant like ledges that'll run like you can see them on a map. They'll run like all the way across the river. It's kind of where like these mountain like points of the river. Like one side will be like a point and it'll push out into the river, and there'll be like a ledge system, a big rock ledge that comes across the whole river, and like. Yeah, you'll catch fish on the downstream side, like in the rapids.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of big fish there hold on the upstream side of that, like protecting. Like I guess they're kind of protecting themselves from the current by staying like just like backed up against those like rock ledges. And if you've got a grass weed line like there as well, you could almost guarantee there's going to be a decent smallie on that upstream side of those rapids. They love the grass. They love to relate to the grass there. So if you've got little grass islands upstream of those rapids, it can be pretty good there.
And now, are they sitting? What do you think? Like, it's like the grass. I mean, like that's a largemouth haven, but obviously this is a smallmouth fishery. Are they kind of sitting there to get at? Like, are they kind of like at some points do they want to move? A constantly moving current, but there's all those times where they want to get out of the current, right? And kind of stage and like staging points, maybe. Like
I mean, and smallmouth in general in the rivers, they like to be around that current, but they're usually not sitting like if they're in the current. They're usually like on the bottom, hiding behind like a boulder or something on the bottom that you can't see that's blocking the current there in that way. They're usually not, you might think they're sitting directly in the current if you're catching them in like a rapid, but they're usually in there like hiding behind something because they'll relate to the current and they like to be around it, but they don't necessarily like to be like
in the current.
In it. Yeah, I was just watching it was like a hook and look video that came out today on like the St. Clair River where they were explaining that, and they showed like underwater footage of smallmouth relating to current, and it'll look like they're in current, but they're really hiding behind something that's in that rapid. So yeah, it is like ambush spots that they're sitting in, and especially if it's going to be real sunny this time of year, they'll relate to those like grass island areas, because those islands. It'll just create like shady spots for them to be in.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Like what are they? For as far as like cover, obviously I understand like the rocks and stuff like that. But we were talking about like let's just say like just really nice, pretty day, like you were talking about, just blue skies. Do you see like a lot of like same behavior that you would see like with like a largemouth that they're constantly trying to find the shade? Because I mean, obviously, like there's no deep end of river systems like this where like traditional smallmouth like to hang out at. Like I mean, they're. Yeah. Well, I can't believe like when I was watching like so many people who were catching these smallmouths so shallow. I'm like, I can't imagine what that's like, But still, I mean, are these things hiding up on brush piles, like on the shore? You know what I mean? Like all over the place, right? I mean, just like whatever they can find as far as shade.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they'll relate to shade. On a hot summer day for sure. And even since you're going to the Susquehanna, like. Those islands, there's so many islands and they're so big, it almost creates like a mini, like, you can just think of it like as a creek within that river that will block out the shade. It'll block out the sun and it'll be shadier a little bit longer. So when you do lose that like morning, that morning bite when the sun starts to come up, if you can squeeze maybe into some of those islands, there are some laydowns in between these little islands that are just narrower, almost just like little creek channels in the middle of the river. That you can find fish on those laydowns in there.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like these aren't like your typical smallmouth or like Great Lake types. I mean, I imagine they are the same species and everything, but they kind of just relate to things different. That makes any sense.
Yeah, it's different than fishing for them in a lake, and I really don't know that much about them fishing in a lake.
Right.
I just got lucky up at Champlain, but yeah, they like shade in the summertime, for sure, but they're not quite as much as a largemouth in a river system. Like you said earlier, they've got to eat. So the fish do tend to be more aggressive throughout the day during the summer. You can still commit to a topwater bite like all day long, on a river system because, it is shallower and those fish still have to eat. And it just on a river, especially topwater, just seems to be like a big fish.
Yeah, I've read that a lot.
Yeah.
So, like, going off of that, though, like, how would you like bait fish in the river system? Okay, that's really going to dictate what smallmouth do, anyways. Like, how do they kind of get around? Because, I mean, the water's moving. And I mean, are they constantly just moving the pockets where they can get out of like fast-moving water? Are they? Is it something like where smallmouth are waiting for them to get caught and like how I guess like how the bait fish relating to everything? And if you understand bait fish, you can kind of understand like what the smallmouth are going to do. Or what any other big fish is going to do, because that's kind of what dictates everything is the food source. Right. What is the bait that we're looking at? Like, what is it kind of like what is their behavior in a river system like this?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like rivers, they have a little bit different bait fish, and a lot of the bait fish are feeding on like small macro invertebrates, like little stoneflies and mayfly nymphs that are on like a rockier bottom. So a lot of times they've got to go up into the riffles and stuff too, those rockier stretches, just to find, those little nymphs and stuff that live on the rocks to eat, which, the smallmouth will follow them. And then river systems even have a lot of a lot of darters. They're like a small bait fish that their pectoral fins are almost like little bones where they can grab onto rocks and they can like sit in like faster current in like riffle areas and, feed, better on like those nymphs and stuff. So like darters are, especially in Ohio, there's a lot of different kinds of darters. They're really diverse species of bait fish, but they do have these pectoral fins where they can just hunker down in current and kind of live in it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even that's crazy. But so I mean, like, is it? So when you look at the river, like, there's different parts of it. There's like obviously the faster moving part, and then you find kind of like those. I guess you would call like what, kind of creeks or what? Not creeks. I don't know. Like where the island breaks it off, and you got one side that, and it's not that fast moving water, and it's kind of deep, or it's deeper. It's deeper than some of the other areas. Do you think the stuff like that become important during certain parts of the day or season where, because the water's not moving, it's kind of it's a little deeper, it's kind of, I guess we call it, it's kind of pulled up. Can those become like area of opportunities? I mean, like the fish obviously don't feed all day, and there's feeding times, there's the major, minor, whatever people talk about. But I mean, like, can you find them kind of just chilling? Like that's,
typically, like, if we're talking the Susquehanna, I fished a couple river bass and tournaments up there. Like, I'll fish like the prime, juicy looking spots like in the morning, and then whenever I feel like my bite has died, I'll just go out into like some calmer stuff like that, and I'll just start drifting, just like just like a Ned rig or some finesse, just like dead sticking it on the bottom out there, and you'll just hook into one that's just cruising around. Not really necessarily holding on to anything.
Yeah, because I was just curious because like in the lakes, you got your primary spots where like you want to get those spots early in the morning, right, and try to get that morning bite or whatever that feeding window is going to be. But then after that, when it gets when the bite gets hard or it kind of shuts down a little bit, you got to be really like specific, like where you're going to be throwing lures, whether you're flipping or whatever. And so you try to find like those money spots. And that's kind of what you're battling for throughout the day. Once things get tough, I was curious, like that's what I was looking at those spots. I was like, I mean, that's like a place to chill out for a while. Like if you've already fed, you want to stay safe. You want to find shade. The things that fish want to do when they're not actively feeding. I was curious about like some of like those areas where you can find like, I guess, like a deeper pool, like less calmer water. Just things to get away from, I guess, like the total chaos of just constantly having to work your ass off, like what you see in the rivers.
Yeah. So I mean, like your typical river, like the Susquehanna is not really your typical river, but like your typical one, you'll just set up like a float trip, and the river's usually not that wide to where you're just gonna float down and you're just gonna fish everything all day long. It doesn't matter. You might go a mile or two stretch where you're not really getting into them during the day, but typically the more water you cover, eventually you're going to find like where they're holding up.
Right.
Especially like in the summer, if the water is getting real low, like it's almost like there'll be areas where it's like the fish can no longer like travel up the river because of, if the water is lower. So it's just like, well, if I just keep covering more water and just making my way down, eventually I'm going to stumble upon that like next breaking point where all the fish are, or more fish are. The Susquehanna is a little bit different because like doing a float trip on it, it's so wide that you kind of have to pick your path as you go, or like work your way like up and down the river or across it, because there are so many like islands and different stuff that break it up to where you can't really fish the both sides of the river just by doing a float trip. You've got to kind of work your way around some stuff. And fortunately, that river, like the rapids are moving pretty fast, but usually, you can, it's pretty easy to move around from spot to spot if you want to work your way across the river versus just running it, north to south.
Okay. Now, what about like trying to figure out, because like, fishing tournament, I'm not sure how many people are going to be at the Susky, but just any tournament, you're talking about 70 to 300 anglers, depending on how juicy it's going to be. Trying to figure out something different about like a river, because obviously, I'm sure your graph helps a little bit, but I see people out there dragging their kayak with a strap on at some of these places. So, like, what are some of the things that like, you could be like to kind of help set you apart, like look for? You know what I mean? Like, to try to find some some area, because right now when you look at a map, all I'm looking for is where the water is breaking on the map. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whatever I see, everyone else sees.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm trying to. I'm not trying to ask for any like deep dark secrets, but I'm sure I can
No.
find some, But it's just like trying to figure out like how you want to fish it compared to everyone else, and like trying to find like. So obviously you got to go there, and I would call it like that style of graphing where you're really trying to figure out the river and trying to find those A, B, and C spots.
Yeah.
Like how do how can you do that? And that's why I was talking about those those pools and stuff, because you found a good one. It's like you said, you might find a place. It's like a place, a rest station, so to say, for smallmouth. You know what I mean? I was curious, like when you're trying to find them like that, and you're trying to find those different spots, spots that aren't obvious. Like what are you looking for, and like how did you go about that? I guess would be like the question.
So on a river system, first off, I'm looking at like the put-in points, and I'm gonna try to find like a tougher, hard-ass spot to put in that other people aren't gonna want to do. Okay. That way, if there's a boat ramp, at point A and a boat ramp at point B, but there's like this tough, like really steep bank that is a put-in in between the two, I might try to like snag down into that spot. And kind of beat the guys above me and below me to, maybe a good spot in there. But also like, if you look at last year's like Hobie, Susky event, it sounded like Mike Iaconelli was doing some stuff that other people weren't doing. It sounded like he was fishing like humps, like river humps that he was seeing on his electronics out like in the middle of the river that he was finding. So I don't necessarily know that he was really fishing those, picturesque, typical smallmouth rapids. And then, I've watched like Christine Fisher's video of what she was doing last year, and I'm not even fishing the Hobie tournament. I just really like the Susquehanna River, and I just follow along on, some of the stuff going on, but it looked like she was kind of fishing those big islands, and like fishing like isolated, like lay down spots that were in there, and just throwing top water in those shady areas of those islands that take up, they're out in the middle of that river. There's several different islands that, you can pick and choose from and fish multiple ones throughout the day. And I've had some success doing that, on that river as well. And, I know, the Pennsylvania guys, they have so much more knowledge. I definitely don't want to speak like I'm an expert. I've been to that river like 3 times in my life. But there are some different things going on that you might be able to figure out. But, some woody structure in between those islands that are, they almost create just like it's almost like you're creek fishing. There's a bank on each side of you once you get yourself in between a couple islands. But yeah, I would fish like isolated wood in some of that, that might be overlooked. And then whatever Mike Iaconelli was doing, those humps, those middle river humps, that's something I wouldn't pick up on, without electronics. I might luck into a fish or two, just like, sometimes I'll just float and just be dragging a tube as I'm floating backwards, and, you'll find a fish. But I mean, that river has a lot of fish in a lot of different areas. And there's some guys who know like a specific, like those big rapids, those big ledge systems, they know specific ones that are really good, and they'll sit on them all day and wait for the fish to move up there. So it's like eventually throughout the day, those fish will move into those rapids and like feed heavily. And it's just like a waiting game, but I don't know that river well enough to really commit and do something like that.
Right.
But I know Jeff Little has a ton of information on how to fish that river online.
Yeah. Well, so the whole float thing, like I've been trying to figure that out. It's not what I thought it was. It's a little more complicated. You're gonna need a buddy, to go, which it's hard to find during a tournament. Yeah. But as far as like trying to pick something apart and like moving water like that, like I can sit on a spot on my lakes or whatever and pick it apart. You know what I mean? And before I even think about moving on, I can sit there, pick it apart. Whether they go shallow, maybe they move up a little bit or whatever. With the river fishing, and you're doing a float, like I don't know, it just seems like a weird strategy. Like when you're really trying to find, and I'm talking maybe it's just like pre-fishing and things like that. Like really trying to get on them. What's like? I guess the better question, like they eliminate water, but also be smart about it. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to just obviously float down the river and miss opportunities. But picking apart water for something like that. What's like something you've done in the past?
So like river fish, especially river smallmouth. Um, I feel like a lot of times, especially this isn't like a difficult time of the year, really. Like, it's not like winter or anything where you've got to fish, crazy slow or anything.
Right.
I think if you're fishing an area and you've made, 3 or 4 casts on it, there's probably not one there. I would just move on. And I think the name of the game is going to be covering water, because in a river system, you're now I've got lucky there one tournament on the Susquehanna where I hit one of those spots right, and I was able to sit on it and catch 6 fish that were between 18 and 20 inches, just back to back to back. But that's tough to do on a river system. The name of the game usually is covering water, doing the Drew Gregory and just power fishing and just keep moving and piecing your pattern together that way. Because if you find something that works in one area, typically you want to just keep moving and looking for another area like that, because it is a little bit different than a lake. There probably aren't going to be as many fish, schooled up, in one specific area. So you don't have to sit on a spot very long to figure out if they're there or not. They may be there later on in the day, but that's that might be a gamble, especially if I don't know the river, that I'm usually not willing to make. I'll typically just move on and just cover water.
Just cover water.
Yep.
Now, when you talk about that was something that I found interesting. Like Jake Harshman talked about it a lot. Like it may take you a while to figure them out, but once you figure them out, like once you figure out a pattern, that's usually and then there's he tells me like the patterns on the river. It's complicated sometimes. It's very complicated. It can change just like that. It's like once you find out where a fish is, like they're usually all kind of set up that way, like whatever they're relating to as far as cover or the way they're actively feeding, and all the way to like what the specific lure that you're using, whatever. Like it's usually consistent. Like once you figure it out, it's like for that time period, you got it figured out, and they're usually all pretty consistent with like how they behave. Is that something you kind of found true too?
Yeah. Usually, even, just floating any river, smaller stuff here in Ohio, typically if I find something that's working, or if they're sitting in like a deeper pool, or if they're up, shallower in the riffles, if I'm catching them on a crankbait, or if I'm catching them, just finesse fishing, with like a tube or something, typically the pattern will hold for the length of, the stretch that I'm doing. And I don't know, river fishing's, I feel like it's kind of easier. You can kind of catch them however you want to, usually.
So I'm over here stressing out about nothing. I'm gonna get down there and have the time of my life and be like, oh,
yeah.
you're overreacting about everything, or overthinking everything.
Yeah, you're gonna find them, man, and it's gonna be fun. Those river fish, they fight, and in that river, I haven't fished it this time of the year. I was there. Heck, it was probably about a month ago now at this point, but they're healthy fish in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that you got a win behind you, got a nice check behind you. Are you doing? Like, why aren't you doing this tournament? I mean, this is your strong. This is a good lake. This would be a good time for you to fish, especially when you already have a first place on a lake that you literally fished blind and accidentally got blown into them. And here you are going to a place where you're very strong at fishing, and you're not going to be there. I mean, you already got a shit ton of angler points from this. What's the? I mean, like obviously life is life, and we got all these whatever requirements and commitments that we got to make, but why aren't you doing this tournament?
Yeah, it was on my schedule at the beginning of the year, but my buddy's bachelor party is that weekend.
Those sons of bitches. I get, dude. How old are you?
29.
Okay, so your friends are still like, dude, I get mad. Like, at 38 years old, if any of my friends even think about asking me to a wedding, I'm like, no, it's not cute and adorable anymore. You should have did this years ago. Like my oldest daughter's no, I'm done with weddings. I'm never going to, like the next wedding I'm going to is like when my kids get married. I'm done with weddings. No, I'm not going to a wedding. And they always want to plan it when like the best time to go do something. Why? Because the weather's nice. It's just like whatever. Like, how good of a friend is it if you're going to miss doing what you want to do? Yeah, man.
I know. Yeah. I got the bachelor party that weekend, and then like the actual weddings, like October, something like a good fall weekend, smallmouth about here would have been on, I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's why I'm missing out on this one. I'm looking at La Crosse and Pickwick, and gonna try to maybe do both of those and pick up some points and see where I stand. I guess I've only done one Hobie ever, so
Yeah. But what do you think about that? Like compared to, because basically La Crosse is a river. Pickwick is part of a river system.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I get so like a little anxious about this river system, because I live close to rivers.
Yeah.
But they flow right into the Lake Ontario and things like that. And these are, I mean, I don't want to say deep, because I'm sure the Mississippi is a lot deeper than my rivers. But they're about, I don't know, 40, 50 feet in the middle of them. They have a good large smallmouth, but the water's not constantly moving. Like, there's dams that kind of dictate like how that current's going to be, and things like that. Like, do you see a difference in trying to fish that way compared to like the Susky or some of the rivers? I talked to a lot of people from Ohio. You guys got, like, that's all people fish there is river systems in Ohio.
Yeah.
But I mean, you feel like there's like a difference. I mean, like as far as I mean, like obviously I know there's current, but not like this. It's a different kind of current, compared to the Susky. But I mean, you see like a difference in those kind of systems as far as like how you would strategize to fish, like say like the La Crosse or Pickwick compared to like the rivers that you normally fish.
Yeah, absolutely. The rivers I normally fish are pretty small. You can usually cast across them. They're not very big. So even the Susquehanna is a little bit challenging, to kind of go up there. It's a little bit overwhelming when you get there, how big it is. It's a mile wide in some spots, but with that being said, there's enough fish, that you can figure them out. But yeah, it's definitely different. Those bigger river systems is definitely a different ball game to just fishing the small stuff that I like to do, but still, I just like to fish current, relating to the current. I think that's why, Champlain, I didn't really feel that far out of my element, because it was like I was fishing one big like current stream, blowing into me all day long.
Yeah, I guess I'm not up here. We don't have a lot of current though. I mean, we have. You would think it would be current, right? Because everything, no matter where the water sources are coming from, everything kind of flows toward somehow, so one way or another. Everything flows towards the Adirondack. We had this whole canal system that takes water from everything, and it all eventually gets to like Lake Ontario. But they're just not these strong currents that you can really rely on, I guess, compared to like what I hear about like down in like the Mississippi chains and stuff like that. Like it's just totally different. Even the Finger Lakes, like you don't get a lot of current unless the wind's blowing. Oneida is kind of the same way. And it's just I just don't really understand like current, I guess, the way some people do. A lot of people don't even come up here and fish from down south, and you'll try to get them to come fish these tournaments. Like, I don't know how to relate to anything up there. There's no current. I'm like, oh, well, then don't get pissed at me when I don't want to go fish your Susky event because I don't understand river systems. You know what I mean? It's just it's one guy bitching about the other thing, but but the whole current thing, I've really got to get up. Well, I got to get out there and actually try it, because I'm spoiled up here with the things that I have up here. But it's still it's a skill, I guess. I haven't really had a chance to really figure out.
Oh, you'll figure it out, man. You'll figure it out probably pretty quick. I know it probably sounds intimidating, if you're not used to doing it, but the fish are going to be related to the current, and that doesn't always mean that they're in the current. Sometimes they're on that upstream side of it, where in a way things are just getting pushed to them, and they're just sitting in front of it, and it's just like the whole river is just they say it's just like a conveyor belt of food for them. So they're going to be facing upstream, and they're going to be eating. So you're going to have fun down there.
Okay, so you're thinking about doing La Crosse or Pickwick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, La Crosse is my it's on my bucket list. Now, if you go up there, are you going to fish? Are you going to go look for a frog bite or something like that? Does that kind of fishing ever like? I know you like you tell me that you whenever you look at when you're going to go fishing someplace, you look for a river or some kind of access that you're used to. But that place, I mean, have you looked at it on the map? It looks like the greatest place on the planet to throw a frog at.
It does, yeah. I haven't frog fished in years probably, but if it's something I feel like I have to do, I probably will. Down in Florida, I used to throw. I learned this from Jean Wilson down on the Wassissa River. She throws just like a Magnum speed worm, on top of the water and just drags it over like the weeds and stuff that way. So maybe I won't necessarily be frog fishing, but I might be doing something like that.
Well, do you feel like it's because everyone says fish your strengths and things like that? Is that something that you just? I mean, these lakes aren't they're a little bit different than what you're used to, but there's grass fisheries and things like that. Like, are you ready to travel and start and like I guess expand your horizon a little bit? Is it something you're comfortable with? It's like you've been fishing a very long time.
Yeah, I've been fishing a while, and like I said, usually the KBF events I'll I went down to South Carolina earlier this year and just fished the river system that was connected to the lake. So a lot of what I would be doing is probably that. Now, if I manage to work my way into a better boat and I'm able to get set up a little bit more for real lake fishing, that could be the next step of the next challenge for me is trying to learn that and figure out because I feel like if I can get decent at figuring out real lake fishing and maybe doing stuff offshore, and if I had the electronics and stuff and paired that with what I know on the small river game,
right?
I could do well in this. But that's an unanswered question really for me on if I'll be able to do that. But my confidence and my comfort zone is always going to be fishing the rivers and creeks that are connected to these big systems that these tournaments are on.
And I guess it's strictly because of current, right? I mean, like you can say like it's river, but like it's what you're like. You seem like you're kind of one of those guys. If you can find current, does that ever relate to like the wind, like wind type current? You think? Because I think that's mainly what our current is up here. Is it's weather induced current. But I mean, do you think that the fish kind of relate the same though, in a sense, like staging points or ambush points and things like that? I mean, it can't be that much different, right?
Well, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. Like typically, I'm on a small enough river to where the wind is never really that. I mean, it can be a pain, but it's never been a factor for me in terms of what it was on Champlain. That was a whole different new world for me. But, it did somehow, I guess, play into my strengths of like, I'm willing to do the hardest bullshit that other people don't want to do. I was willing to go out there and flip my boat and get to this spot. And like the spot was just so chaotic that it was like that river comfort zone. I like things like rapid and challenging in that way. And I like fishing in that environment. So it somehow did play into my strengths. Not really. I got really lucky. I mean, I sat in the spot and I cast either straight out at a 45-degree angle to the right or at a 45-degree angle to the left. I made 3 casts all day, and they were just there. That was just
I can't wait for that day to happen to me when things just work out so perfect. Right now, I'm working pretty goddamn hard. Well, I mean, obviously you worked hard for your fish, but as far as like finding fish and locating them, and I haven't had that day where everything just magically comes together, and I'm on KBN with a big check behind my head. I just haven't had that day yet.
Yeah, man, it's coming, and I never really thought it was going to happen to me. I tournament fishing really since like 2015, and I used to always just wonder, like, man, in river bass, it was your top 3 fish. It wasn't 5, and I was like, man, how do these guys come out and just consistently put up like 60 inches, through 20 inches everywhere we go? I'm like, when's that going to happen for me? And finally had that situation happen where I just. But what those guys were doing, I'm talking like Lance Coley and Tim Perkins. Those guys know what they're doing, and it's talent and knowledge there. But what happened to me? I just got really lucky.
Well, one more question, and then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. But after fishing, Lake Champlain and getting that experience and flipping your kayak 3 times and not having a fish finder, what do you look at in the future? Like, what would you change up, or what do you want to change up? Because I mean, they only have so many tournaments on river systems. I know you can kind of find, you can find spots that kind of fit, but we're all trying to get better and expand, so we don't get caught up in just one way of fishing. Do you want a new kayak? Are you going to start investing in other equipment now? Because I mean, once you win first place at a Hobie event. Not that it really matters, but like, I mean, there's some expectations now, right?
Yeah,
like, I mean, it's like, can he do, can he do it again? Or you probably get a little bit hungrier now. It's like, now I want to do it again. I want to go out there and compete against the best of the best. Has anything changed as far as like what you want to get? Are we getting rid of the Kilroy or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm probably going to keep my Kilroy. I've got a Jackson Cruise as well, but I might sell. I've had it since, 2014 probably now at this point. But I'm car topping. Like if people saw me in the check-in there at Lake Champlain, you know, the guy that's got a Kilroy car topped on his Ford Escape, they probably wouldn't have thought I was going to be the guy that win the tournament.
No. We had like Mike Iaconelli's gigantic truck with 2 Hobies on, and you know, it's like there's so many badass. I mean, not that rigs are, but there's so many rigs that look like they were ready to go out there and win Lake Champlain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But I think a big portion of this check from Champlain's going to go to. I'm looking at a Hobie Lynx right now. Because it is so lightweight and I can car top it, and I still think I'm gonna be able to get it in and out of rivers well, but also have that pedal drive ability. And I like to keep things pretty simple. I don't bring a whole lot of stuff out there with me, so I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not ready to pull the trigger quite yet, but that's what I'm looking at right now.
Okay. Oh, cool. All right. So, what do you think your next tournament's going to be for sure?
Lacrosse is I'm on the fence with it, but definitely Pickwick, and there's some local stuff I'm gonna do here with the Buckeye Kayak Fishing Trail. They've got a Dayton and Columbus Rivers events, but right now, yeah, I'm looking at Lacrosse. I'll probably end up doing it just because I got to get 3 in now.
Yeah,
just to see if I can make anything happen. It's almost a shame to leave a first place finish, to just sit there.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about, because I was talking to what's his name, Matt Zett, whatever. He was on my podcast. He got like 7th place, whatever, 6th or 7th place. Good placement. It's just like when you place really well, it's like, dude, you kind of got you kind of got to go back and try to get some more. You know what I mean? And I always worry when I talk to people, because it's like they'll always say, well, that's the last one for me. I'm like, yeah, but you got points, man. You got points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I'm looking at it. Yeah.
Well, are you thinking about the Tournament of Champions now? Is that something you follow in your radar?
It's on my radar. I'm supposed to go to Vietnam that week, but
the war's over, bro. What are you going there for? I'm just kidding.
No, my girlfriend, she's Vietnamese. She's born and raised in Columbus, but we had booked this trip back months ago.
Before you were a first place winner, right?
Yeah, that's right. But right now the travel restrictions there, like I still don't think we'd be able to go, if it was today. So we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with that. But I mean, if I go in and do well at Lacrosse, and then just go to Pickwick and pick up more points, maybe that Vietnam trips gets pushed back, because there's a lot on the line there, Tournament of Champions. So
yeah, I mean, like the momentum, right? I mean, yeah. All right, man. Well, shit. I'm trying to think if I had anything else to ask you. It seems like a lot of stuff I've already. Whenever it says is there such thing as a stupid question, I'm pretty sure I asked a few of them tonight. But I really do appreciate you coming on and talking to. Everyone's gonna listen, because everyone knows. Like, I wasn't gonna sign up for the Susky. I've been saying this for like 2 years. I'm not doing that tournament, because it's nothing like what I'm used to fishing. So when I finally bucked up and decided I was going to do it, and I've actually signed up now. They got my money, so I'm trying to make myself feel better by talking to the people who've actually have experience with river fishing. And you seem the best guy to do it. So I appreciate you coming on the show and actually sharing some of your knowledge about the whole thing.
All right, yeah, man. If you send me your number, or I could probably Facebook message you, maybe some more specific details of what I know of the Susky. I'm no expert, but I know some areas that usually hold some nice fish. So
well, I can't do that, because everyone will be like, "Oh, Josh is cheating." But
yeah.
But I really do appreciate it, man. Is there anyone you want to thank that kind of makes fishing easier for you? Like, I don't know if you got sponsors, or just want to thank your awesome girlfriend who carried your ass around Lake Champlain and got you from wherever, area to area.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have any sponsors. That's right. But I'll definitely thank Trang, my girlfriend. She shuttled me around. That was her first tournament experience. And she held me to high standards there. I'd send her a picture of a 19, and she'd tell me to, go get a 20. So yeah, she definitely pushed me there, and had food for me, when I got off the water. So yeah, big shout out to her.
Well, cool, man. Well, congrats on the first place. I know it's already been a few weeks, and but man, I mean, there's still half a season left, so hopefully you get back on the water and do some more damage, man. But yeah, man, it was good talking to you, and let's stay in touch.
All right, yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, later.